Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to The Great Retention with Camber Parker, sponsored by the YoProKnow. I'm Camber, your young professional expert and founder of the YoProKnow, where we bring you the answers you need to know about how to hire and retain the best talent, starting with the young professionals you work with. There's a lot of young professional fish in the sea, as I like to say, but how do you catch them? And what do you do once you reel them in? That's where we come in. Today, I am so excited to have Amy Bircher join us, owner of MMI Textiles, joining us virtually from Cleveland, Ohio. Amy and I were recently connected through a friend in the textile industry, Devin Steele, and we connected on the topic of apprenticeship and how to train young talent in her field specifically. On our show, it's really important for us to bring leaders from all industries and expertise to give us the most holistic approach to attracting and retaining young talent. Amy, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So we're going to go ahead and get started with what I like to call a lightning round. So in a few sentences, if you can, answer a couple of these questions for us. So first, tell us something that is not on your resume. So if somebody were to look at a resume on a piece of paper, this would not be there.
So I would say, Camber, I'm the ultimate connector. Whether it's teaching at universities about our great industry, and the careers that exist within our industry, that's really important to me. And so I think just that ultimate connector in the business world and in academia.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That's a very, very important skill to have. What is your favorite modern workplace tool?
Well, considering I'm a Gen Xer, there's been a lot of tools that have been brought to me over 26 years that, going back to not even having a cell phone to, having cell phones and Google Maps and things like that to get from here to there. But I would say the thing that I go to the most is an iPad Pro with the pencil.
Ooh,
because I can walk around my factory. I can take notes from every generation. What are they thinking? What are they doing? What matters to them? Okay, this could be fixed here. This could be a better way of doing something there. And all of those notes are written versus trying to remember what's in your head. And then and so that's been to me the best. I wish it was something I could say like AI, but it's not that.
No, I mean, that's great, especially for your industry, right? Like you can go around, you can have this modern tool that then helps you when you're walking around in the factory and connecting with people. And I think that makes things pretty easy. So I love that answer.
Yeah. Yep.
Tell us about a lesson that you learned as a young professional.
So I think mentoring is one thing that I learned very young that you cannot have enough of. And, I advocate for that quite a bit, Camber, just the power of mentoring. And it's okay that one person may not be the right fit for you. So don't just put yourself with that person if they're not that right message for you.
Yeah, that's great.
So mentoring early, often, and all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like you said, you can't have enough of it. I really like that concept. And it's something that most of our guests will mention mentoring at some point. And I think that's just a testament to how impactful it is in your journey.
Yeah.
All right. Tell us a little bit more background on you specifically, your business. You have such an amazing journey. And tell us a little bit more before we dive into the meat of the discussion today.
Sure. I'm a second generation textile family member. I started MMI 26 years ago on my own, went off on my own. And 26 years later, we've had 4 acquisitions. We've opened up manufacturing in North Carolina. So proud to have roots both in North Carolina and Ohio. We have a pretty diverse work group in terms of generations, right? We've got anywhere from Gen Zers, and our COO is a millennial, which is I'm pretty proud of.
That's great.
I have a true passion for the textile industry, especially the U.S. textile industry, and keeping it thriving.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit more just for the listeners, viewers who might not be as familiar with textiles, because I mean,
Sure.
currently I'm in Greenville, South Carolina, and we know that this was quite the textile hub.
Yeah.
There's all of these old mills that are being turned into different organizations and retail spaces and apartments. And, we're in the hub right now. So tell us a little bit more, though, for people that might not have that context.
Sure. I think if I could go to what I teach about at the university, in fact, I'm doing one tomorrow, it's about how deep our textile industry goes in terms of fiber development, yarn development, the chemistry that goes into that, then fabric formation, whether it's knitting or weaving, then all the way to dyeing and finishing. And then it might be laminating, it might be quilting, it might be doing a whole bunch of other things. That all exists here in the States. And a lot of people don't know that.
Right.
It can service aerospace, military, medical. We did a ton for PPE. Our industry was heroic during the pandemic. Upholstery to apparel, a whole host of manufacturing that goes on in the United States that I don't think people really are aware of.
No, they're not. And I mean, I myself was really part of that statistic back, earlier this year until I got plugged in with the textile industry. And when I first really kind of had this aha moment was at the Southern Textile Association meeting back in March of 23. And there were several speakers that came up and said, this work that we do, I mean, it is so much more than what people really think it is. I mean, it's what the carpets are made of. It's what the walls are built with. It is, like you said, aerospace. I mean, it's developing these structures and materials that can save lives, that can keep us safe. And it's just something that's not widely talked about. So I hope that this conversation can at least reach some people that are maybe part of that mindset.
Yeah. And there's actually, if you're not in this industry, I'd say 9 times out of 10, most people have no idea how much is actually made here. If they go into apparel design or they want to meet the next brand, they assume that all their fabrics and all the inputs are coming from overseas. And it doesn't have to be that way. There's a lot that is happening here.
Yeah. And one other piece I want to mention, just because you said you're a second generation textile career person, tell us about just how ingrained the family generations are in this industry, because just from my exposure this year, I've learned it's a family business for sure.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's once it gets in your blood, they say it's hard to get it out. Devin would tell you that. I think there's a lot of passion within the textile industry because we've had to have a lot of grit and we've had a lot of decimation over the years. Yeah. We've had a lot of, you were just talking about former plants that get turned into something else, and they used to actually manufacture wonderful products, but they had to be reimagined because they didn't make it. Yeah. So the ones that have made it, so proud that we have, we're all sticking together. It is grinding it out. And it's also thinking then about how to be different, because if we're going to make it for the next 10 years, we better be open to change and be open to, all different, ways of looking at manufacturing and workforce development.
Yeah. And that's a great segue into the next part of the conversation, which is talking about the future leadership. And before I do that, just congrats to you on 26 years, because that is a really big feat. Again, just definitely in any setting, right? Any industry, but particularly in this industry. So congrats to you. So Amy, today we are talking about the young professional generation. So we're talking about Gen Z and millennials that will make up 2/3 of the workforce by 2030. Help us set the stage by talking about these two massive generations, what they look like as employees in this industry.
So they're very different, but I feel like so many people want to say that millennials or Gen Zers don't want to work as hard. I really don't feel that. They're different, but it's not necessarily worse. They just want different things. Yeah. And, I think if we can understand that and accept that, and acknowledge and bring and nurture that, that's going to put us much further ahead and be prepared.
Yeah.
So I just look at, when I looked at this question, I thought about needs, and do we just make decisions and assume? I think a lot of assumptions happen in business from leaders that this must be what they want. Oh, this must be how they think. Well, I mean, have a conversation with them, right? I mean, that was part of my comment about the iPad Pro.
Yeah.
Asking what matters to them. A lot of times it's just more of work-life balance. They want flexibility. The technology is important to them. Think about, especially the Gen Zers, maybe not as much millennial, but Gen Zers. They have had a cell phone the cell phones have existed for almost since their beginnings. And they probably went to school with them. They don't know how to exist without them. So when they go to a job, they still want to have their phone. And in the old days, it was, no, you don't have your phone app. You can't have that. So you've got to be able to give and take. Super important.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that and for being a leader that has that perspective. So just to make sure I'm clear, you really feel, just based on how they are currently acting, what they look like in your industry, you believe they do want to work hard. They just have these differences. They have these different ideas of what motivates them, right? That's really what you're saying.
Absolutely. And they might have better ways of doing things that make them get things done faster. And to me, that should be as important. They should be mentoring older people.
Right.
So I should never just be looking at a mentor as the older one and a mentee as the younger one. To me, I love being mentored by our interns that we hire. Wow, that's pretty cool. What did you just teach me that, helps us be a better organization?
Right. We should all have that approach, right? I think that one of the things we always try to share when we speak to people, when we talk to different clients and companies, everybody should understand how others like to communicate. Everybody should understand how different people, what skills and strengths other people have, so that you can try to learn them yourself and then upskill yourself. So everybody in the industry should really try to figure out, what can I learn from experienced professionals? What can I learn from young professionals? So I love that take so much.
Right.
I think that's great. Tell us a little bit about what's happening right now in manufacturing, textile industry, as it pertains to recruiting and retaining, because I know that we know everybody's really struggling with this right now, but I hear often that the recruiting piece is very challenging in this industry, and retention, once they're in, culture, it depends on the company, right? But culture usually drives the retention. So what's happening that you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. If you're in manufacturing, it's really difficult, and it can be wage driven. It can be the average wage that you're paying a person to come in to do manufacturing, but what we have done to try to be different, Camber, is we look at things and say, if you want to work part-time, we'll figure that out. If you want to work full-time, that's great. If you want to work overtime, that's awesome, right? And really understanding and having those conversations, and I know we had talked about this before, what the regular recruiting routes, whether it's Indeed or they still work. You've got to offer an attractive wage and flexibility. If you don't, it's easy for someone to just go down the street and find something else. It's just the way that it is. And with more jobs than there are going to be people in 10 years, we've got to get really creative on that. So we started an apprentice program, and how that happened, Camber, and I have definitely talked about this, shared my experience, helped other companies in my industry understand what we did that was successful. We had a meeting with local technical colleges that talked about their programs that they have for high schoolers that, they go to high school for a part of the day, then they come to their facility for, different types of trade skills, right? Whether it's, welding or, could be textiles, whatever it might be. General engineering, so they're mechanically inclined. And during that conversation with these technical institutes, I said, man, if you had somebody right now, I would take them right now. And the gentleman said, I actually do. Are you serious? That, honest to God, that is how it happened. I said, yeah, please have him call my plant manager or myself right away. I got a call 2 hours later from this young man, showed up the next day after school, was so excited about this opportunity. In Camber, he came in, we opened, arms wide open. You can work 2 hours, you can work 3 hours, you could work 1 hour. He wanted to work Sundays after church. He wanted to do whatever he could. And then we had him all summer. He loved it so much, Camber, that he told other kids in the school, and we got one more kid that didn't have another job that we now have two.
Great.
So these conversations I'm having happen, where do you want to go? Where do you see yourself? They may not stay in the textile industry, but they may, right? You never know. And if we can cycle through and have a program and we can constantly have someone in that position of training, you never know when you capture them. And Camber, they may not stay with me. They may go down the street to another textile company. That's totally fine.
Right.
I will be happy with that because it keeps them in our industry.
Right. I think that's a really great approach. And it sounds to me like relationships is a key piece here because you have the relationships with the tech schools. And then once you bring people in, you come in and you obviously give them this great experience, probably because, again, you're opening the doors to them with wide open arms. And then they have such a good experience that they will then tell their relationships, their friends, right? And that program that you've created has just created this really wonderful referral source for you. And so that good retention turns into good recruiting. So that's really amazing that you do that. And the other thing I'll mention that I really like that you talked about is this kind of customization, right? You're saying, and that's hard for some leaders to do, but I like that you're doing that because you're saying, all right, you want to work part-time? You want to work after church on Sunday? Great. And so I think those are some, like the relationships and customization piece is what stood out to me about that apprenticeship program.
Yeah. It's really important that we embrace that because if we don't, we're going to be in a harder place than we are now. So
what are other people in the industry doing something like this, or is this kind of a unique thing that only you offer?
No, I'm sure there's other people that hopefully have had success. I've certainly had some conversations and have been part of webinars to share the experience. So I'm hoping people are jumping on that and going to their local colleges. Yeah. The other thing that the workforce development, the economic development community that came to meet with us at our factory, they recommended to us and our industry that we actually need to start at the 8th grade level and get in front just as an industry, call the local middle schools, say, can we come into one of your classes, talk about our industry? And it blew me away that they said, you have no idea that their 8th graders usually have their mind made up what track they're probably going to go. And I did not know that. And I said, okay, I mean, it doesn't hurt. They said it doesn't hurt. You can go into those schools. You may not be able to hire them, obviously, but you are at least setting the stage for awareness of your industry and that there is some, there can be a great career that comes out of it. You can support a family and live local, right? You don't have to leave your hometown.
Right. I think the hiring today needs to be that long-term game like that and going into schools, even if you're like, all right, these kids are really young, but it at least promotes that awareness. So I really like that you mentioned that point. Let's talk a little bit more about the training and development side. So obviously you have this apprenticeship. How how does it work in terms of that development? Like when they're actually in the role, what does it look like? And do you have any other training and development opportunities that you offer your talent when they come in to work for you?
Sure. So on the apprentice side in manufacturing, it's fully documented.
Okay.
It's a true program, connected partnership program with the state of North Carolina. So we document all of the sort of their path, their 90-day path of here's what they're supposed to learn. Here's, the accountability that they've learned this, and they can check the box on that side, and they get a little pay raise each time they move up to, say, apprenticeship 2, right? There's different levels. There's 3 levels.
Okay.
That's taught by current employees that we kind of create pods, as well as our plant manager. So that there's just we've got, training documents, standard operating procedures on how to do those things. They have to be aware of that and then, kind of pass a test, if you will.
Okay.
That's for manufacturing. As far as up here in Ohio, we do a lot of different leadership development opportunities, whether it's classes or retreats, et cetera. So you can't have enough of that. You have to have that in your budget as a company. If you don't, again, you're not going to retain your talent because they want to constantly learn.
Yeah, they do. And
As
that's always a struggle, when a company tells me, well, we can't put that in there. We can't do more than, $25 for the year per person. I'm like, most things are not that cost anymore. They've gone up a little bit to join even a young professional group, right? Like it's like $150 now. I mean, you have to, and that's minimal for a company to engage in my opinion.
Yeah, and one thing that we're building right now here in Ohio is we're building a wellness room. So it's going to be for meditation, stretching, yoga, healthy lifestyle coaching. We have a lady here that's coming in. She's doing lunch and learns.
Great.
How to, like a 10-day movement challenge. Everyone gets, an opportunity to have one-on-one coaching with her.
Wow. That's amazing.
They want those kind of things, right?
I mean, they do.
And it's not just about business. This is about personal. So this is a personal choice. So they just take time and they can go in that room. They can talk to her. They can meditate, whatever speaks to them.
I love that. And that's one of the next questions is really talking about environment and space, because one of the things that we've learned in our research with young professionals all across the country, specifically in manufacturing, engineering, what we're seeing is they're really going towards the companies that have those clean environments, very health-friendly, focused environments. And plants are hard. Plants are hard to attract young talent. So I love that you have this wellness concept, because I think that's pretty unusual for the field. So can you talk about that, just the environment that young talent that you've seen are looking for in this industry? Is that pretty spot on what I mentioned? Or are you seeing different things?
No, that's spot on. And it's easier to do that in our Ohio headquarters, right? In a manufacturing space, it's not insurmountable. I mean, you can do it. Factories aren't necessarily created or built with those extra rooms. I want to see how this goes here in Ohio. And when I'm in North Carolina next week, I want to ask them, if we had something like that, would you love that? Or, that might not, again, this is why you have to talk to them. They might say, no,
you have to ask.
We love that we have a picnic area outside, and we have a really clean factory, and we have a really clean cafeteria, and that's good. Right. And they might be okay. So it's just knowing what would make them happy.
Yeah, no, I'm so happy that you mentioned that. And the key is just asking, right? You can listen to data all day long, but you've got to ask your team, because they might have a very different example and answer. So before I get to my last question, Amy, I do want to ask, what have you seen from a technology standpoint? Like, I know we already talked about technology as far as iPad Pros go, but just as far as technology on site, are you guys investing in that? Is that something that you're noticing that these young people in the apprentice programs are looking for?
Not really. Manufacturing technology, we are investing in that. We're always investing. We are looking at what would be called more of a semi-automated, right? So that a person can run the equipment, but you don't need maybe two people, right? So we are looking at, automation in manufacturing space.
Great.
But they like their iPads too on the floor, because if they're sketching out something, whether it's new equipment or a new process, they write it out, they draw it out. So in terms of what they are looking for on the shop floor, that's something we already provide.
Yeah, great. Well, I hate that our time is running out here, but because this is such a great conversation. But just to wrap things up today, Amy, as the growing number of young professionals enter the workforce and Gen X and baby boomer generations begin to retire, we know a lot of boomers already have, and we know that it's only a matter of time before people on the kind of upper side of those Gen X will. Where do you see the biggest challenge from your industry?
What we were talking about, just recruiting, awareness of our industry, retention, and keeping manufacturing strong in the U.S. textile. I can just speak from the U.S. textile side.
Yeah,
that's going to be a big challenge. I think we can do it, Camber, but it's going to take these conversations that get out to people. That we've got to be different. You've got to be very, very diligent and different about how you approach what the new world looks like in manufacturing.
Yep. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing so much wonderful insight today. I really love your perspective. I think that, there's a reason that you've been doing this for as long as you have, and all of the hard work has really paid off clearly. So thank you for being the leader that young professionals will look up to. Anything else that you want to add before we wrap up today?
I think I've said a lot.
You have. It's been a wonderful, wonderful episode. Thanks again, Amy. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Camber. Have a great day.
You too.
Right,
thanks again for being our guest on today's episode and for joining us on The Great Retention with Camber Parker. Before you go, remember this. Young professionals make up nearly half of the U.S. workforce today and are expected to jump at a rapid pace in this next decade. What will you do to help them become the great leaders we need for our future? Join us next time for more information on how to recruit and retain young professionals. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps others who are interested in this topic know where to find other episodes like this. And last but not least, don't forget to share it with your coworkers. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.